Commander Hansol stood at the bridge of his ship, the Star Defender, watching helplessly as another human colony fell to the enemy. His hands gripped the railing so tight that his knuckles turned white. The massive display screen showed the Void Swarm's crystal ships surrounding New Eden Colony, their purple shields glowing brightly against the darkness of space. "Fire everything we have," he ordered, his voice steady despite his frustration. The crew responded quickly, launching their most powerful energy weapons at the enemy ships. Green and blue beams of light struck the purple shields, but as usual they did nothing. The shields didn't even flicker. Hansol had seen this same scene play out 6 times in the past month. The Void Swarm, as humans called them, had appeared 3 months ago. Their ships looked like giant crystals floating in space, protected by shields that no weapon could break. They didn't talk or make any demands. They simply arrived, destroyed colonies, and left. "Commander, New Eden's defenses are failing," reported Officer Lee, her eyes fixed on her screen. "They're asking for immediate evacuation support." Hansol nodded, though the movement felt heavy. "Send in all available rescue ships. Tell them to focus on getting people out. We'll try to keep the swarm busy." The rescue mission began immediately. Small, fast ships darted toward the colony while the Star Defender and its fleet continued their attack. The Void Swarm's ships didn't even try to dodge the weapons fire. They didn't need to. Their shields were perfect. Through his command screen, Hansol watched the evacuation numbers climbing. 500 people saved, then 1,000. But there were 15,000 people on New Eden. They wouldn't have time to save everyone. "Sir," called out Officer Park from his station, "the swarm is changing formation. They're going to fire on the colony." Hansol's heart sank. The Void Swarm's ships moved into a circle around New Eden. Their crystal bodies began to glow with a bright white light. He had seen this before too. Whatever weapon they used, it would pass right through the colony's shields like they weren't even there. "Get our rescue ships out of there, now," Hansol ordered. He wouldn't lose more crew members today. The rescue ships turned and raced away from the colony just as the Void Swarm fired. The white beam struck New Eden, and in seconds, the entire colony was gone. No explosion, no debris. It simply vanished, along with everyone still inside. The bridge was silent. Another defeat. Another colony lost. Hansol looked at the final evacuation numbers. 3,247 people saved out of 15,000. Not even a quarter of the colony's population. "Sir," Officer Lee's voice was quiet. "Galactic Alliance Command is calling. They want a full report." Hansol straightened his uniform. "Put them through to my private office." Before leaving the bridge, he turned to his crew. "You all did everything you could today. We saved over 3,000 people. Remember that." In his office, Hansol sat heavily in his chair. The call screen lit up, showing Admiral Park G1's concerned face. "Commander Hansol, I've seen the initial numbers. Do you have anything new to report about their shields?" "No, Admiral. Our weapons still have no effect. Not even our new quantum torpedoes made a dent. Their defensive technology is perfect." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid of. We've lost 8 colonies in 3 months, Commander." At this rate, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "There has to be a way," Hansol said firmly. "Everything has a weakness. We just haven't found it yet. Keep looking, Commander. We've got research teams working around the clock. Someone, somewhere, will find an answer. We have to believe that." After the call ended, Hansol returned to the bridge. The Void Swarm ships were already gone, moving on to their next target. He looked at the empty space where New Eden had been and made a silent promise to find a way to stop these invaders. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, on a small mining station near Jupiter, a simple mining engineer named Lee Sujin was about to discover something that would change everything. Lee Soo-jin was having a bad day at mining station Jupiter 7. The station's main drill was broken again, and the replacement parts wouldn't arrive for another week. She walked through the dimly lit maintenance tunnel, carrying her old tool bag and muttering to herself about outdated equipment. If they expect us to meet quotas, they should at least send us working machines, she said to no one in particular. Her heavy boots made hollow sounds on the metal floor as she headed to fix yet another broken pipe. The mining station wasn't much to look at. It was one of the oldest stations still operating near Jupiter, all rusted metal and patches on patches. But it did its job, mining rare minerals from the captured asteroids that were brought in. Soo-jin was halfway through fixing the pipe when her emergency radio crackled to life. All personnel, this is not a drill. Unknown object detected approaching the station. Please proceed to emergency shelters immediately. She grabbed her tool bag and started running toward the nearest shelter. But halfway there, she saw something through the corridor's window that made her stop. A strange crystal-shaped object was floating outside, purple shields glowing around it. She had seen news reports about these things, a Void Swarm scout drone. The drone was small, about the size of a car, probably sent to check if the mining station was worth attacking. As Soo-jin watched, it started cutting through the station's outer wall with a white beam. She looked at the shelter door, then back at the drone. The station's defenses were minimal. They hadn't expected the Void Swarm to bother with an old mining operation. If that drone reported back, the whole station would be destroyed. Not today, Soo-jin whispered. She opened her tool bag and pulled out her favorite tool, an old-fashioned magnetic maintenance hammer. It wasn't fancy, but it was heavy and reliable. The drone cut through the wall just as Soo-jin hid behind a support beam. The purple shield pushed through first, filling the corridor with soft purple light. Soo-jin's heart was beating fast, but her grip on the hammer was steady. As the drone moved past her hiding spot, Soo-jin did something that would later be called either very brave or very stupid. She swung her hammer as hard as she could at the drone's shield. She expected the hammer to bounce off. Everyone knew nothing could break Void Swarm shields, but instead there was a sound like breaking glass. The purple shield shattered where the hammer hit it, cracks spreading across its surface like broken ice. The drone spun around, but Soo-jin was already swinging again. This time, with no shield in the way, the hammer struck the crystal body directly. The drone cracked, sparked, and fell to the floor. Soo-jin stared at her hammer, then at the broken drone. "That's not supposed to happen," she said quietly. The emergency radio crackled again. "All personnel, the unknown object appears to have been destroyed. Maintain shelter status while we investigate." Soo-jin picked up her radio with shaking hands. "Station control, this is Engineer Lee Soo-jin. You're going to want to see this. I just killed a Void Swarm drone. With my hammer." There was a long pause before the radio crackled back to life. "Engineer Lee, did you say a hammer?" "Yes, a regular maintenance hammer. Their shield. It just broke. Like glass." Within an hour, the station's security team had secured the area and sent images to Alliance Command. Within 2 hours, Commander Hansolv himself was on his way to Jupiter 7. By the end of the day, the Alliance's top scientists were studying both the drone and Soo-jin's hammer. Soo-jin sat in the station's meeting room, still holding her hammer, as she explained what happened for the 5th time. She looked at the hammer's worn handle and smiled slightly. Sometimes the oldest tools were the best ones. On the other side of the station, a message was being sent to every Alliance ship and base. Possible Void Swarm weakness discovered. Stand by for updates. For the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. Dr. Kim Do-ha's laboratory on Jupiter 7 was filled with screens showing data from tests on the broken Void Swarm drone. He had been working nonstop since arriving at the station 2 days ago. Beside him, Lee Soo-jin watched as he ran another test, this time firing a small energy weapon at a piece of the drone's shield crystal. "Nothing again," Dr. Kim said, making another note. "Just like all our other weapons." He turned to Su-jin. "Show me one more time what you did." Su-jin picked up her hammer, which had been carefully studied and scanned. "I just hit it. Like this." She demonstrated the swing, stopping just before hitting the test surface. Commander Hansol watched from the corner of the lab. He hadn't slept much since arriving at Jupiter 7, too excited by this possible breakthrough. "But why?" he asked. "Why does a simple hammer work when our best weapons fail?" Su-jin had been thinking about this since her encounter with the drone. She walked over to one of the screens showing the shield's energy patterns. "I think I know," she said slowly. "It's like the drills we use here for mining." Dr. Kim and Commander Hansol looked at her with interest. Su-jin pointed to the pattern on the screen. "See how their shields handle energy weapons. They absorb the energy and spread it out, like water flowing around a rock. But a hammer." She held up her tool. "That's just plain old force." Sometimes the simple answer is the best one. Dr. Kim's eyes widened. He quickly typed something into his computer. "Of course. Their shields are tuned to handle energy weapons because that's what advanced civilizations use. They never considered someone might just hit them. Like building a wall against water but forgetting about rocks," Su-jin added. Commander Hansol stepped forward. "Can we be sure about this? We need to be certain before we tell the Alliance to start using kinetic weapons." Dr. Kim nodded and pulled up more data. "Look at these readings. Their shield technology is incredibly advanced, but it's specialized. It's perfect at stopping energy weapons, but that specialization makes it weak against simple physical force. We've been thinking too much like an advanced civilization," Su-jin said. She walked over to a table covered in pieces of the broken drone. "We kept trying to find a high-tech solution, but sometimes you just need a hammer." Over the next few hours, they ran more tests. They tried different types of physical impacts, measuring exactly how much force was needed to break the shields. Dr. Kim worked with Su-jin to understand why some hits worked better than others. "The sweet spot," Su-jin explained, pointing to a diagram, "is a strong, focused hit. Not too sharp, not too spread out. Just like breaking rocks in the mines." Commander Hansol was already thinking ahead. "We can modify our ships for this. Add simple kinetic weapons. The Void Swarm won't expect it. They'll think we're still trying to use energy weapons." "We should keep this quiet," Dr. Kim suggested. "If they find out too soon, they might try to adapt their shields." Su-jin nodded, but then smiled. "Even if they do, they'd have to choose. Either stay strong against energy weapons or protect against physical hits. They can't do both without completely changing their shield technology." Commander Hansol stood up straighter. "I need to contact Admiral Park right away. Dr. Kim, can you write up a full report? Su-jin, we'll need your mining experience to help design the new weapons." As they left the lab that evening, Su-jin looked at her hammer one last time. The simple tool that had changed everything was now being treated like the most valuable object on the station. She thought about all the colonies that had been lost, all the people who had died, because everyone was looking for a complex solution to beat the Void Swarm's advanced technology. Sometimes, she thought, the best way forward is to take a step back. Admiral Park G1 stood in the main hangar of the Alliance space station, watching workers transform cargo ships into weapons of war. The massive space had become the center of what they now called Project Thunderstrike. She observed as engineers installed long rails along the sides of the ships, designed to launch what Su-jin had nicknamed space hammers. "The first batch of kinetic weapons is ready for testing, Admiral," reported Captain Yang, walking up with a tablet in his hands. "Engineer Lee's design works perfectly. Simple, but effective." The Admiral nodded, watching as workers loaded large tungsten rods into one of the modified ships. The rods were basic in design, just solid metal shaped to hit with maximum force. They didn't need complex targeting systems or power sources. Gravity and speed would do all the work. In another part of the hangar, Su-Jin was teaching Alliance weapons officers how to aim the new weapons. She had brought her mining experience to the project, showing them how to strike at the weakest points of crystal structures. Think of it like breaking rocks, Su-Jin explained to the officers. You don't need fancy tools. You just need to hit hard in the right spot. She pointed to a diagram of a Void Swarm ship. Their shields are strongest at the front, where they expect energy weapons to hit. So we aim for the sides and corners. Commander Hansol entered the hangar, walking quickly toward Admiral Park. The scout reports are in, he said. The Void Swarm still doesn't suspect anything. They're continuing their usual attack patterns. Good, the Admiral replied. They think we're helpless. Let them keep thinking that while we prepare. The project was moving faster than anyone had expected. The Alliance had many cargo ships that could be modified, and the weapons themselves were simple to make. They didn't need rare materials or complex technology. They just needed weight and speed. Admiral, Su-Jin called out, walking over with a serious look on her face. We need to talk about the test results. They moved to a quiet corner of the hangar. Su-Jin pulled up a video showing their latest weapon test against a piece of salvaged Void Swarm shield. Look at this, she said, playing the footage. When we hit the shield with multiple rods at once, it doesn't just break, it shatters completely. Admiral Park watched the video carefully. Can we do this against their ships? Yes, Su-Jin answered. We've designed the weapons to fire in groups, 3 or 4 hits in the same area, and their shields won't just break, they'll collapse entirely. Commander Hansol joined them, looking at the test results. How soon can we be ready? The first fleet of modified ships will be ready in 2 days, Captain Yang reported. We've trained enough crews to operate them. Admiral Park straightened her uniform and looked around the busy hangar. Everywhere, humans were working together, preparing to fight back against an enemy that thought itself invincible. The Void Swarm, with all their advanced technology, had made a simple mistake. They had forgotten that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Send word to all Alliance colonies, she ordered. Tell them to hold on just a little longer. Help is coming. She turned to Su-Jin. Your hammer started all this. Would you like to be there when we use it on a larger scale? Su-Jin smiled and patted the hammer hanging at her side. Wouldn't miss it for anything, Admiral. It's time to show the Void Swarm that they're not as unbeatable as they think. As they walked back to oversee the final preparations, Admiral Park felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones, and humanity was about to prove that in a big way. The Proxima Centauri colony hung in space, its lights still shining against the darkness. Commander Hansol watched from the bridge of his ship as the Void Swarm approached. This time, though, things would be different. All ships report ready, Officer Lee announced. Kinetic weapons are loaded and aimed. Su-Jin stood near the back of the bridge, her hammer now mounted on the wall as a symbol of hope. She watched the tactical display as 30 modified cargo ships moved into position behind Hansol's fleet. Each ship carried hundreds of tungsten rods, ready to be launched at the enemy. The Void Swarm ships are moving into their attack formation, Officer Park reported. They're not paying any attention to the cargo ships. They think they're just evacuation vessels. Hansol nodded, just as we expected. Their arrogance will be their downfall. He pressed a button on his command chair. All ships, prepare for Operation Thunderstrike. Remember your training. Aim for their weak points. The Void Swarm ships, their crystal bodies gleaming and purple shields bright, moved closer to the colony. They ignored the Alliance energy weapons, as usual. Their shields flickered slightly but held firm against the verage. They're almost in position, Su-Jin said, checking the distance measurements. Just a little closer. Hansol waited until the enemy ships were perfectly aligned. Then he gave the order everyone had been waiting for. Launch kinetic weapons. All ships, fire. The modified cargo ships sprang to life. Their rails glowed as they launched hundreds of tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The massive metal projectiles streaked through space toward the surprised Void Swarm ships. The enemy didn't even try to dodge. Why should they? Nothing had ever broken their shields before. But these weren't energy weapons. These were simple objects moving at extremely high speeds, just like Sujin's hammer. The first volley struck the nearest Void Swarm ship. Its purple shield crackled and shattered under the impact. The second volley hit before they could react, striking the exposed crystal hull. The mighty ship cracked and broke apart like glass. Direct hits. Officer Lee shouted. Enemy shields are failing. The bridge crew watched in amazement as more Void Swarm ships suffered the same fate. Their perfect shields, designed to stop the most advanced energy weapons, were useless against simple kinetic force. They're trying to retreat, Officer Park reported. They're breaking formation. Don't let them escape, Hansol ordered. If any get away, they'll warn the others about our new weapons. The cargo ships adjusted their aim, launching another wave of projectiles. Sujin had helped design the firing patterns, using her knowledge of how to break crystal structures. The tungsten rods struck in groups of 3 or 4, maximizing the breaking force. Within minutes, the battle was over. Where once had floated a dozen mighty Void Swarm ships, now there was only debris. The Proxima Centauri colony was saved, and not a single human life was lost. Send word to Admiral Park, Hansol ordered. Tell her Operation Thunderstrike was a complete success. The bridge erupted in cheers. Sujin walked to her hammer on the wall and touched it gently. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one, she said quietly. As cleanup crews began collecting the broken pieces of Void Swarm ships for study, Hansol called for silence on the bridge. Today, we proved that humanity cannot be defeated by advanced technology alone. Today, we showed that a simple hammer can break the strongest shield. He turned to Sujin, and it all started with one engineer who wasn't afraid to try something different. The news of their victory spread quickly through the Alliance. Humanity had won its first major battle against the Void Swarm, not with advanced technology, but with simple physics and human ingenuity. Chief Engineer Kang Minji stared at the test results on her screen in the Alliance Research Center. After their defeat at Proxima Centauri, the Void Swarm had changed their shield design. The new shields were stronger against physical attacks, but something about the readings caught her attention. Dr. Kim, she called out to her colleague, could you look at these energy patterns? Dr. Kim Doo-ha walked over to her station, carrying his coffee. The two scientists had been studying captured Void Swarm technology since the first victory. Sujin's discovery had opened up new ways to fight the enemy, but now the Void Swarm was trying to adapt. Their new shields are 50% stronger against kinetic weapons, Minji explained, pointing to the data. But look at what happens when we hit them with energy weapons. Dr. Kim's eyes widened as he studied the readings. The shield is weaker against energy attacks, much weaker. He quickly sat down at his own computer and started typing. They had to sacrifice one type of defense to strengthen the other. Commander Hansol entered the lab just then, looking tired after another battle. The Void Swarm's new shields had made things harder for the Alliance ships. Please tell me you have good news, he said. Minji turned to him with a smile. Better than good, Commander. We found their weakness. A real weakness this time, one they can't fix. She pulled up a diagram showing how the Void Swarm's shields worked. Their shield technology can't handle both types of attacks at once. When they make it stronger against our kinetic weapons, it gets weaker against energy weapons. When they try to block energy weapons better, it becomes weaker against physical attacks. Like trying to hold back both water and rocks with the same wall. Dr. Kim added, make it solid enough to stop the rocks, and the water flows through. Make it fine enough to stop the water, and the rocks break through. Commander Hansol leaned forward, interested. Can we use this? Already working on it, Minji said. She pressed a button, and a new diagram appeared. We're designing a new attack pattern. First, we hit them with kinetic weapons when they strengthen their shields against physical attacks. We switch to energy weapons, Hansol finished, understanding the plan. Exactly, Dr. Kim said. They can't adapt to both. Every time they try to defend against one type of attack, they become vulnerable to the other. The news spread quickly through the Alliance. Ships were modified to carry both types of weapons. Crews trained to switch between attack styles quickly. The Void Swarm's perfect defense wasn't so perfect anymore. In the lab's testing area, Minji demonstrated the new strategy. She fired a tungsten rod at a piece of salvaged Void Swarm shield. The shield stopped the rod, glowing brightly as it absorbed the impact. But when she immediately fired an energy beam at the same spot, the shield broke apart easily. We found their fundamental flaw, she explained to Commander Hansol. They built their entire defense on the idea that advanced civilizations would only use energy weapons. They never planned for an enemy that would use both simple and advanced technology together. Commander Hansol watched as they ran more tests. Each time, the results were the same. The Void Swarm shields could not maintain full strength against both types of attacks. Sujin's hammer didn't just give us a way to fight back, he said quietly. It showed us that sometimes the best solution is to use everything we have, both old and new. The Alliance now had more than just hope. They had a real strategy for victory, one that the Void Swarm couldn't counter without completely changing their technology. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, humans were truly ahead. The Earth's moon provided the perfect backdrop for what would become the most important battle of the war. Sujin stood on the bridge of her modified mining vessel, the Stonecutter, watching as the largest Void Swarm fleet ever seen approach Earth. All mining vessels report ready. Her second-in-command, Officer Cho, reported. The regular fleet is in position behind the moon. After their earlier defeats, the Void Swarm had gathered their remaining forces for one massive attack on humanity's homeworld. Their crystal ships filled the space ahead, their shields now designed to adapt quickly between physical and energy defenses. Admiral Park's voice came through the communication system. Engineer Lee, are you certain about this plan? Yes, Admiral, Sujin replied, touching the hammer at her side for luck. Mining vessels are built to break things. We've modified them exactly for this purpose. Her fleet consisted of 20 mining ships, each one equipped with specialized cutting equipment. The tools that once broke asteroids had been modified to serve a new purpose. The regular Alliance fleet waited behind the moon, ready to attack when the moment was right. Void Swarm ships entering range, Officer Cho announced. Their shields are configured for energy defense. Sujin took a deep breath. All ships, begin the hammer strike formation. The mining vessels moved forward in a tight group. The Void Swarm ignored them at first, probably thinking they were just support vessels. That was their first mistake. Launch mining drones, Sujin ordered. Hundreds of small, remote-controlled mining units shot out from the vessels. Each one carried equipment designed to deliver focused impact force. The Void Swarm ships quickly switched their shields to physical defense mode. That was their second mistake. Now, Admiral, Sujin called out. The Alliance fleet emerged from behind the moon, firing energy weapons at the Void Swarm's now vulnerable shields. Several enemy ships broke apart under the assault. The Void Swarm switched their shields back to energy defense. That was their final mistake. Execute hammer strike, Sujin commanded. The mining drones activated their cutting equipment, striking the crystal ships at precisely calculated points. Sujin had spent months studying crystal structures in the mines. She knew exactly where to hit to cause the most damage. The largest Void Swarm ship, nearly the size of a small moon, turned its weapons toward the mining fleet. But Sujin was ready. All ships, synchronized strike pattern, she ordered. The mining vessels and their drones moved in perfect coordination, hitting the massive ship from multiple angles. Its shields flickered between physical and energy defense, unable to protect against both types of attacks. The giant crystal ship began to crack. Small breaks appeared first, then larger ones. The Void Swarm's greatest weapon was falling apart. "Keep pressing," Su Jin encouraged her fleet, just like breaking rocks in the mines. "Find the weak points and keep hitting them." The combination of mining equipment and Alliance weapons proved too much for the Void Swarm. Their mighty fleet, which had seemed invincible just months ago, was being destroyed by tools designed to break rocks. When the last crystal ship shattered, silence fell across the communication channels. Then cheers erupted from every human vessel. Su Jin looked at the debris floating in space and smiled. The very tools that the Void Swarm had probably considered primitive had led to their defeat. Admiral Park's voice came through again, filled with pride. "Well done, Engineer Lee. It seems your hammer has struck one final time." The war wasn't completely over, but this battle had broken the Void Swarm's main force. Humanity had proven that the combination of simple tools and advanced technology was more powerful than either one alone. 3 days after the great battle near Earth's moon, a strange message arrived at Alliance headquarters. The remaining Void Swarm vessels, scattered across different star systems, were broadcasting the same signal in multiple frequencies. It was the first time they had attempted to communicate. Song Yunho, the Alliance's leading xenolinguist, worked tirelessly to decode the message. He had studied the patterns in Void Swarm behavior for months, developing theories about their communication methods. Now, finally, he had a chance to test those theories. "It's not just random signals," he explained to Admiral Park and the gathered Alliance leaders. "They're using crystal vibrations to form complex patterns, similar to how we use sound waves to speak." The Admiral leaned forward in her chair. "Can you translate it?" Yunho nodded, adjusting his translation equipment. "They want to talk. They're requesting a meeting." The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a space station orbiting Mars. Su Jin stood with Commander Hansol and Admiral Park as they waited for the Void Swarm representatives to arrive. Her hammer hung at her side, more a symbol now than a weapon. The Void Swarm sent 3 crystalline beings, smaller than their ships but similar in appearance. Their bodies hummed with patterns of light that Yunho's equipment translated into words. "We have existed for 10,000 years, the translation began. "In all that time, no species has ever broken our shields. We believe ourselves perfect, undefeatable." Admiral Park stepped forward. "Why did you attack us? Why destroy our colonies?" The crystal beings pulsed with new patterns. "We test all species we encounter. Those who cannot overcome our defenses are deemed unworthy of existence in the galaxy. But you?" The lights flickered in what Yunho later described as their version of wonder. "You found a way, with simple tools and clever thinking." Su Jin touched her hammer. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." The Void Swarm beings turned their attention to her. "You were the first, the one who showed that our perfect defense had a flaw. We had become so focused on advancing our technology that we forgot the power of basic physics." Commander Hansol spoke up. "And now, what do you want?" "Peace," the translation read, "and knowledge. You have shown us that true advancement comes not from abandoning the old ways, but from combining them with the new. We wish to learn from you, as you have learned from us." The peace treaty was signed that day. The Void Swarm agreed to help rebuild the destroyed colonies, sharing their crystal technology with humanity. In return, humans would teach them about the value of maintaining connections to simpler, more fundamental solutions. 1 month later, Su Jin stood in the newly opened Alliance Museum of Victory. Her hammer was displayed in a special case, alongside pieces of the first Void Swarm shield she had broken. A plaque told the story of how a mining engineer with a simple tool had changed the course of an interstellar war. "What do you think about all this?" Commander Hansol asked, standing beside her. Su Jin smiled. "I think it proves what I've always believed, that progress isn't about throwing away the old to embrace the new. It's about knowing when to use each tool you have." As she spoke, A group of young engineering students gathered around the display, listening to their teacher explain how a hammer had saved humanity. Among them were both humans and small crystalline beings, learning together about the importance of keeping things simple. The Great Void Swarm War had ended not with advanced weapons or complex strategies, but with a simple truth. Sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best ones.